Okay, well, the usual thing, power failure, electricity is cut, so I have to go into a part 2 for this tape. Uh, I'll go back to this to remind you that here we have this child, Hay bin Yaqdan, who is starting without, he's a child of nature. There is no nurture at all. And he is going to discover the whole world and learn everything through his own experience. So this child was raised by this deer, by this ghazal, who was his mother, who gave him milk, who took care of him. He played with the animals, a little bit like Enkidu before he met the harlot. He's a child of nature. And when the ghazal dies, this boy is totally devastated. So he doesn't know what happened. He knows that this animal all of a sudden stopped moving. So lesson number 1, animal stopped moving, animal is cold. So maybe this animal is not living anymore. In other words, we discover the concept of death maybe. But then he went a bit further and he opens up this animal. He dissects it. It's a clear, intelligent boy. And discovers somewhere where the heart is still beating when the child, because the first time he opened it up, the animal was cold. Then he opened up another ghazal who had just recently died or was just living. And he discovered the heart. And so in his mind, he thought of this as to be the living organism of the soul, you know. So the concept of the soul for many of the Arab philosophers was not very clear where it lies. Many people thought that it was in the heart, others thought it was in the liver, others thought it... So there was always this confusion. One of the philosophers thought it was in the dawra damawiyya, in the circulation of the blood. So you know that when you dissect a human being, you don't see the soul. So it was quite, again, what would a scientist come up with the idea of the soul? So this little boy comes up with the idea that warmth is equivalent to life, and coldness and lack of motion, and that beating that was still is equivalent to the structure of life and death. Then he finds it hot, so he comes to discover fire. That fire is one of the elements that really brings life and energy to the human being. This child looks around him and he finds that around him are plants, animals. He looks up, he sees the stars, the sun and the moon, and he decides that he is going to emulate these. In other words, try to behave like these, to understand how these behave, and to come out with conclusions of what the world is all about. Now, I want here to remind you a little bit about Aristotle's scale of nature, scala natura. For my students who were with me in IS 203, we took this in IS 203, and I showed them a chart, which I'm showing it to you on the slide. Aristotle believed that everything that moves has a soul. And therefore, he started first at the lowest level and talked about the soul of minerals. Of course, we think today, do minerals have a soul? But for Aristotle, he always thought of the magnet, how two magnets attract each other. And he thought this was some kind of motion. So anything that moves has a soul. Then he talked about the vegetative soul, the soul of the plants. These, they move, they go to the sun, they eat, they grow. So there is a vegetative soul. And it includes the mineral and the vegetative. Then there is the animal soul. These are the animals who have instincts, who have emotions, who move on their own accord, not like a plant, and who include the vegetative and the animal. So there are the souls of the vegetables and the souls of the animals. Then there is the human being who has the rational soul, And the rational is higher than, so part of us, works like a plant, part of us works like an animal, but the truly exclusive part of man is the way that humanity, rationality thinks. Then Aristotle said above these are celestial beings. There are the planets and all of these, and these are very pure, and these go into circular motions. And above all of these, there is God. So Ibn Tufayl here, being an Aristotelian student of philosophy, he is going to go through these levels to learn each one alone and to start experimenting these, hoping that when he graduates from all of these, he may discover God on the top as the prime mover, or what he calls him, the necessary being, the being that is that which is without whose power all the others will not function. So he starts first of all looking at around him, the animals. And he finds that he shares a lot with these animals. First of all, he studied the plants, and he found among the plants, and I let you read the text, there are some plants that have seeds, other plants that grows on trees, other plants that... And he, in fact, became a kind of a person who would decide that, quite an environmental conservator, and saying that I will only eat from the plants that are too many. I will not eat from the rare plants or rare fruits that have rare seeds. So he starts analyzing and studying these. Then he looked at the animals, and he found that the animals are different kinds. Some of them are flying, some of them are lizards, some of them are mammals, some of them have milk, some of them have blood. So the whole concept of he tried to avoid killing animals to eat unless he really had to. So in a way, he also became like clean and unclean animals in his mind were developed. Then he looked up and he saw that there were also things that are up in the stars. And up in the stars, he saw that there is a cyclic pattern. The sun rises in the morning, sets in the evening, rises again, so there's a pattern. The moon goes through different phases, so there's a pattern. There's a cyclic pattern. And so he started himself going through circles to think that maybe he also would become like these stars. And then, after doing this he, at one point, asked the question that everything around him has been made. It has been formed. And since everything has been made, there should be a maker. And therefore, he says, all this sana'a requires a sani'. And again, with Aristotle in his background, he thinks, okay, there is the material cause, there is the formal cause, but where is the efficient cause? Where is the maker of this world? And so, who is the efficient or the necessary being that is behind all of this? So he comes to the conclusion that, first of all, he asks the question, who made this? It can't be the animals, it can't be the plants. Did I make this? He, for a moment, falls into the mistake all human beings fall, that maybe I created the world. But then he realizes that if I had made this world, I could not have made it the way it is, because there are many things in it I don't understand even. So he comes to the conclusion that there should be a maker, a creator, a sana'. And out of these conclusions, he therefore becomes a believer. He becomes the first person who, from scratch, without the help of a prophet and the help of a religious book, to say that there is a creator. Now, Ibn Tufayl here wants also to make an important point, and that is, all human beings, by using their scientific mind, can never deny the existence of a creator. However, although science proves that God exists, it is religion that tells us what kind of God it is. Science does not tell us if this is a good God or a bad God, whether there is afterlife or there is judgment day, whether there are good people or bad people, whether there are companions of the right or companions. That is religion. But the minimum that he is telling us that science cannot be, or philosophy cannot be against God. Science cannot lead to kufr, as Al-Ghazali said, because by using your scientific mind, the least you can do is to acknowledge that there is God. Therefore, through his scientific experiment and through his mystical experience, because he goes also through these meditations and prayers, praying and reflecting, he comes to the conclusion that there is a God. Now, at this stage of the story, a very interesting development takes place. Two visitors from another island come and visit the island of Ibn Tufayl, of Hayy bin Yaqzan. These two people are Muslim. They are, one of them is called Asal, the other is called Salaman. Again, Ibn Tufayl plays on the symbolism. One is Asal or As'al, is a guy who probably asks questions and is more scientific. The other is more Sallama, the one more is based on faith and lets, whatever he is taught, he doesn't contest or ask questions. Now, as these two people reach, they see this young person, or this man, by now he's 35, he's 40, going around, flowing hair, naked, and they're scared. They're scared of this animal who looks like no other animal. In the meantime, Hayy looks and sees these people from far behind the trees. And he's scared because this is the first time he sees people wearing, a big abaya and a amama and a turban. And he never saw clothes like that. And he doesn't know what kind of monsters they are. What kind of animals are these? Now, eventually, little by little, they meet. Now, one of the problems that Hayy has is that he has no language. The courses you take in the English department, they are called communication skills. You need language to communicate with somebody else. If you didn't have any other person to communicate to, you may not need language. You may talk by telepathy. You may not talk by pictures in your mind, by chips, I don't know. So all of a sudden, Hayy and these people start learning as people would learn by sign language. So they point to an animal and give him a name, and they point. So he starts acquiring vocabulary. Once he starts acquiring vocabulary, and once he starts acquiring some basic language, they start communicating. And when they start communicating, these two people who come from a religious village, and town, are amazed at the amount of things that Hayy knows. And they start talking to him about Islam, about religion. And Hayy is amazed at how many rules and regulations are in the religion that relate to things he doesn't understand. For example, property doesn't mean anything to him. Marriage, adultery, incest doesn't make sense to him. Inheritance, he doesn't understand. But prayer, he does, because he spends all his days praying, meditating, fasting, because he also decides what to eat, what not to eat. And therefore, some basic personal religion he understands. Social religion, he doesn't understand. And these people are amazed that this guy knows about God, but he doesn't know all about the fact that God is Rahman and Rahim, that there is an afterlife and there is a Yawm al-Din. And therefore, they take Hayy with them to their own village, to their own island. They want to show off about this person. And as they go, and he starts talking, all of a sudden they realize that there are two groups of people. One group who rejects him because they want to strictly adhere to what the religious law says, whatever Sharia says, without any different kinds of interpretations. And another group, which are more like the salamat, more like the as'al and ijtihad and interpretation, are amazed by this person's skill of being able to reach God. And therefore, Hay realizes that there are three kinds of people in this world. There are some who accept things as they are without questioning. And there are some who accept things as they are, but they give a bit of margin of going into a bit of interpretation and ijtihad. And then there are others who are way above all, who use their mind and who can reach to higher levels of God's knowledge and truth. And therefore, like Al-Ghazali, who thought that Sufis are the best, this guy who thought that the people who have reason are also the best. And therefore, he comes to this conclusion that there are three classes of people. Some are like Hay, some are like Asal, and some are like Salaman. The three of them are believers. The three of them are not blasphemous. They don't are people who are blasphemers. They all acknowledge the presence of a creator, but each one has his own method of reaching God. And therefore, he comes to the conclusion that it is, since people have different capacities of understanding, that requires different instruments, there is no point in trying to convey the truth to people except through means suitable for their own understanding. And here I would like to just comment that for Hay, the most important thing was that if everybody, for Ibn Tufayl, if everybody followed Hay, they would reach the knowledge of God. But what is the disadvantage of taking Hay's method? First of all, you have to keep on investigating every day and not give up. So you may not be a believer until you're the age 70. What if you die earlier? You lose paradise. What if you come to wrong conclusions like he did at some point? What if your conclusions, what if you give up? What if you're lazy and you can't be perseverance and you do the animal emulation but you don't do the celestial bodies, you don't go on? So the conclusion of Hay was that all human beings have the capacity to know God in one way or another. Some do it by pure religious texts through theological knowledge. Some do it through some kind of theological knowledge and interpretation, and others use their own minds to reach God. All of them are believers, but somewhere in the back of Ibn Tufayl, if you asked him who are as-sabbaqun, he would tell you those who are like Hay, who reach God out of their own personal effort and investigation. So Hay is an example that God can be reached by truth, but these people have to be exceptionally intelligent, exceptionally clever, perseverant, never give up, reach the right conclusions, and also have, so he is a scientist, but a mystic at the same time, because he goes through meditation and through prayer and through fasting. So Ibn Tufayl and Al-Ghazali are, in a way, two different approaches in Islam. Al-Ghazali believes that philosophy may lead to kufr because people may not be able to reach God by reason, but Sufism or mysticism is a good way to reach God. Ibn Tufayl believes that All people will reach God if they are, in fact, believers. They are on the right path. They are on Sirat al-Mustaqim. They are a straight path. But those who are like himself, like Hay, investigators, God will give them dual reward. God will give them double reward. Okay, so we will discuss this on next week whenever we get a chance to meet on Tuesday and on Thursday. So we will try to see how much you can follow this discussion. Stay safe, take care, and I'll see you on. Please open a Zoom account as soon as you can. Thank you.